Okay, hi guys. Oh, you seem far away today, but I wanted you to be able to see the pyramid. So hopefully you can see that, because that's what we're going to be talking about today. This is another edition of the Beginner Witch series. So it is a Beginner Witch series on a budget, but some of the stuff that I realized that we need to talk about are not about the stuff of being a beginner witch. And a lot of people have talked to me about, we did how to set up your altar. And some of it, we have to kind of get to the what witchcraft is and what that means and how you begin on this journey. So the best way that I have found to do this is to start from what many people call the witch's pyramid. So I brought out a pyramid so we could kind of talk about, there's a bug on my screen. There it goes. Okay, as long as you're not going to be right in the way. Okay, so the witch's pyramid has been around for a while. I don't know who originally came up with it, but it's a good way to begin when you're a beginner witch and you're starting out and you're just learning. It's a good way to talk about, this is the base stuff that you really need to start to think about when you're a beginner witch. Okay. And the author that I think explains it the best, at least for me, her name is Mackenzie Sage Wright. She wrote a book called 13 Moons to Becoming a Wiccan, How to Make the Transition from Theory to Practice. So, and like when I started out, it was a long time ago, and I did learn about the witch's pyramid, but it's like, before it was a concept that I always was like, okay, I get that, but I just didn't know how that really came into my practice. So, like I said, this author has written about that, and she's got articles online about beginning witch and that kind of thing that are really good, and if I remember to, I'll try to link it in the down bar, her site. But we're going to start out by talking about the beginner witch period. The beginner witch pyramid. And starting off by, you have to know that the pyramid's base has 4 corners. Okay, so that makes the base of your practice, of your witchcraft practice. And I really should get blue kyanite or something out, because once again, Mercury is still in retrograde, so my thoughts do not always come out of my mouth the way they are in there. So sorry, bear with me. So the first corner of the witch's pyramid that we're going to talk about is to know. Okay, so keep that in mind. This is your witch's pyramid, and the first thing you're going to start with is to know. All right, to know is corresponds with the element of air. So it's, we know from the tarot that air is kind of the thinking suit that would correspond with swords. It's about what you know. What do you know? And so when you're starting out, that first cornerstone needs to be, we need to know what we're doing. What does that mean? This means you have to study, read, experiment, seek knowledge. If you look at TV and movies and stuff, it's a lot about instant gratifications. They pick up a spell and they try it out and bing, it works. And if you think that's how witchcraft works, then you're naive and not really delving into what we're talking about when we talk about witchcraft. Okay, so witchcraft to me is the knowledge and the energy work and the power behind how we know how to create a spell or an intention and send that off in the best way that we know. So we want to influence ourselves and our environment. Okay. This isn't TV, movies, instant gratification. If you pick up a book of spells someplace, or you pick up a spell from Pinterest and you get all the ingredients together that it says and you say the words and you expect it to work, you are fooling yourself, because that is not what witchcraft is about. We do spells. We do spells, though, that create or manipulate the energy around us to send them into a channel of energy that we then expect that to change the direction slightly or to increase the energy to work the way we want it to work. Okay? We need to understand why a spell works. The very basics. You have to get down to the core of why a spell works. Why you're making this gesture in the air that this spell says make this gesture. Why you're using this herb in this spell. Why you're saying this word. You need to know how to achieve the state of mind you're going for in order to make this work. How to raise and direct the energy that you're looking for. All this is before you even try to do a spell. So it's about study. It's about trial and error. It's about reading up. It's about sensing energies. It's about learning how to manipulate energies, learning how to raise energy. Okay? So all that has to go into it. That creates this cornerstone of the first part of the pyramid. I'm going to say that forever. Okay. So the second cornerstone of the pyramid is to dare. Okay? So the first one is to know. The second one is to dare. To dare, that corresponds with the element of earth. So this is where we practice, develop our skills, endure and persevere. We understand that rewards don't always come quickly and easily. We must be strong and courageous. And what does that mean? Does that mean we expect to raise demons and stuff? No, that's not what we're talking about. When we say you have to be strong and courageous, that means you have to be strong and courageous enough to know what you're asking and why, to look at yourself truthfully in a truthful mirror and say, first of all, why do I want this? Why is this something that I feel I need to create or to manipulate in my world? What is it about that I think will further my path, my life path? You need to get to know yourself, even your shadow side. So that goes along with a lot of stuff in this community. We're talking about shadow side, and Read the Wonder. Shane at Read the Wonder started that awesome tag about, meeting your shadow side. You need to test yourself. You need to face your true inner self. You need to master your own ego. And that is not an easy thing. Sometimes the things that we want are just a facade. We want to look important, or we want to be able to show people what we can do. And that is the ego self, and so we need to know that before we're going in there. And that doesn't mean that's always a bad thing. Some people have talked about why are there stuff like beauty spells and stuff, and that is there's such a thing as a healthy ego that you want to put your best foot forward, and then there's such a thing as your ego self, your id, that is only self-serving. That's something different. Until you develop your trust in your own abilities and have confidence, and you're willing to take the actions that you need to take to create and guide what you want to happen, you do not have a hold of this cornerstone to dare. Okay? So it really is about the skills needed to persevere, to understand why you're doing this, to understand why you use this herb, to understand why you're pulling this crystal in, to understand all that, which again, it kind of is all a part of the whole. It goes back to the first cornerstone too, of reading and learning so you know. To dare is practicing those skills and knowing yourself and why you want to do this thing that you want to do. Okay, so the third cornerstone is to will. So we have to know, to dare, and to will. That's the third cornerstone. Third cornerstone corresponds with the element of fire. Is your heart in it? Are you committed to it? This corner involves desire. Are you really ready to go after what you want in a magical, with a K, way? Are you ready to make it a priority? Are you ready to sacrifice for it? That doesn't mean sacrifice your cat. When I lived in North Carolina, the people around there, when they found out I was a witch, would hide their cats from me. It means sacrifice your time, your energy, your emotions into putting that energy, that working to action, and putting it into the universe and believing that that is going to come to fruition, that is going to manifest itself. Okay? So that's to will. That's the third. So the last one is to be silent. And this one I think is probably the hardest for beginner witches, especially because there's a line. Okay, so let me go backwards. Let me talk about what that means, to be silent. Magic is a serious undertaking. We do not go into this lightly. There are things that should not happen. Prideful displays of boasting to inflate the ego is not going to help your workings. In fact, it's going to hinder them. So witches who really practice real magic, most often, they will not showcase their personal spells. So that is, people say, I don't let people look in my book of shadows. I can see that. That is when you put something into your book of shadows. When we talked about book of shadows, there's a couple different books of shadows that, we talked about. One is your practice. Like, okay, this is what I tried to do. Once you know something works, that's when I suggest you put it into your quote unquote your book of shadows. This is your personal, I know these spells work. And this is something that I personally would not share my personal spell working, magical workings. Not like I plan on talking about how to cast the circle, how to call the quarters, that kind of stuff. That is all general stuff that isn't a personal working. But if I, let's say, do a spell to get a new job, and I find that the things that I did worked really well for me, that is not something that I probably am going to list on my site as a spell you can buy from me or talk about in a video, because that is a personal thing. For one thing, it may not work for someone else unless they have the same intentions and same energies and everything feels the same to them. It's not something that's going to work for someone else. And for another thing, that's a very personal thing. Magic is a personal craft. It's a personal practice that works for you. That's why I don't believe in other people saying this is what works and this is what you should do, because it has to feel right for you. Your intention is 90% of whether this is going to work or not. And if, as a beginner witch, it's going to be hard. Wait, let me see what I say. Okay. I would never detail a personal spell out in public because, one, I'd be losing the focus I created. So I worked really hard to create this energy and send it along in the way that I wanted it to go out there. And then I talked about it and I told everyone how I did it. And if one of two things can happen, a whole bunch of people might be like, oh, that's really cool, I'd like to try that, or oh, that's a great idea. The other thing is there are always going to be trolls or negative people that will down that will say, oh, I can't believe you believe that's going to work. And that negative energy now is attached to that spell that I worked so hard to create and send out. And it's going to veer it off course. It's not going to work anymore because there is something negative attached to that. So disrespect could follow from denigration from non-believers, which would totally screw it up. Until a magical working is manifested or complete, negative energies can derail your efforts, which is true. When you're a beginner, this can be difficult because excitement and desire for external validation can cause you to talk too much. Okay, so that does not mean, by the way, it does not mean you can't go to somebody and say, hey, I decided I was going to try to do this spell, and do you think that this is a good idea? That's okay. You should not say, I did this spell and I really put a lot into it and I put it out here, and here I want you to look at a detailed copy of it, and do you think it's going to work? Because at that point you have derailed your own efforts. Keep in mind that I always say, if you think that that works for you, then it works for you. So you can ask questions, you can ask if something works, or if you think that's a good idea, but I don't want anybody to be sending me their spell that they've put out into the universe already and put energy and effort into, and ask me if I think it's going to work, or ask me if I think they should change something. I am happy to, and I love to mentor new witches, but mentoring you is saying, okay, I can give you some suggestions. I can give you a suggestion of what works for me, or I can suggest an herb that I feel like that works. Why don't you try out, work on that herb and see if that has the same kind of energies for you. But I should not be validating everything that you do, because that has to come from you and from the universe. Okay? And I know that's hard. As a beginner witch, you want that validation, but you'll get it. You'll get it if you create that energy and put it out there, and you have learned about it and you have tested stuff out and you put it out there. You'll get that validation from how your spell works. The universe will allow your spell to work. Okay, so the last part of, now we have our cornerstones and we're building on that, and the last part is the very point of the pyramid, which is to go, which is the element of spirit. Okay, now there's some debate and some conflict, as controversy as to whether people put this part of it in there. I believe that it's a valid part of your working, so I put it in there. The people that I have read about the pyramid from, Mackenzie and people like that, also put it in there, so I'm going to say it, and you have to decide for yourself if you think this is a part of your witch's pyramid. So to go. It is controversial, some don't include it, but it puts your soul to work by not just talking the talk, but by walking the walk. Witchcraft is not a passive pursuit or an interest that you have. It's an influence, it should influence and infiltrate every single aspect of your life. Your service to self, your service to your community, and your service to your world. It should influence everything you look at, everything. If you believe in witchcraft, which you have to in order for it to work, you have to believe in it, it should influence every single thing you do. It means to take the other four corners and begin to apply them to all aspects of your life, bringing the four corners into balance. When you accomplish that with With wisdom and divine insight from your higher self, you are able to achieve greater skill levels. Yay, that's the goal, okay? Now, does that mean that you have to be out of the witch's closet, the broom closet, to everyone you know? Nope. Because the fact that it influences everything you do does not mean you have to walk around to everyone and constantly say, I'm a witch. Or I'm going to manipulate these energies, or I'm going to grow this energy. You just do. Everything that you're doing is influenced by your practice, which is the reason for me that witchcraft is a spiritual practice. You do not have to be a pagan to practice witchcraft. You do not have to be a pagan to be a witch. You do not have to be a witch to be a pagan. There's different, to me, the witch part of it, the witchcraft part of it means that I use different parts of the elements to influence the world around me and myself. And it's the actual practice part of it. It's, now to me, that kind of interchanges with my beliefs, but it doesn't have to. That's why there can be Christian witches, and Buddhist witches, and pagan witches, and whatever kind of religion you want, because the witchcraft part of it to me is not the religion. It's not a religion. Okay, so how do you build this? What are the steps to it? Okay, so when you are a beginner witch, what is the steps to becoming that witch? What is the steps to, improve your practices? I really do think that one of the first steps is to read and soak in as much information as you can soak in. I said I became like a sponge. I read everything, every book I could get my hands on, I read about. I look in Pinterest. On my off time, I'm trying stuff out. So the other part of that is now you need to practice that. Again, I cannot say enough how important it is to practice your skills. It's a skill set. If you get a book like the Herbal Magic, Compendium of Herbal Magic, and you say, okay, what herbs do I have? I have cinnamon. So in your practice, you're going to say, okay, you know what? This Saturday, I'm going to work with cinnamon as I have it. If I can find it. Okay, cinnamon. All right, and it says in this book, cinnamon was used as an incense in the temples of ancient China. So the usages: more than one modern love potion formula includes cinnamon along with other herbs of love. As a magical herb, it can be added to any mixture for internal or for incense, or it can be placed within an amulet to increase one's patterns of good fortune, and it does all kinds of other things. But let's stop there. Okay, so it's kind of, it increases love intentions. So you are going to test that theory. This Saturday I'm going to work with cinnamon and test that theory. Is that what it does for me? So you grind a little up and you put it in your morning tea. You wear, crush it up and put it in a little amulet and wear it. And you sprinkle a little at the bottom of your bed, and you see if that intention, and when you're doing that, you are putting that intention in there, by the way. It's not, you just don't just grind it up and put it in your tea and not think about what you want it to do, because you're telling the cinnamon, I'm going to use this to put forth that I plan on increasing the feelings that I love for my significant other. And when you sprinkle it on your bed, you are intending, putting that energy out there. I want my husband to notice me tonight when we go to bed and go, wow, you look really sexy, you look great. And does that happen? And if that happens, then for you, or it happens a little, or it happens a lot, you know this is one of the things that cinnamon does for you. And write that down somewhere. You should be starting some kind of correspondence table that you know, corresponds. So if you want a great night with your husband one day, you know, oh look, cinnamon helped that with that, so I'm going to pull that out. Now you can also put into your spell stuff that you haven't experimented with, but it may not work as much as you want it to, or it may have a slightly different effect. So that is one of the trial and error kind of things about witchcraft, is you can take a spell that you didn't write and work on it and put that intention into it, and sometimes it will work and sometimes it won't, because that combination of ingredients and crystals and energy, it just was a little off for your energy. It didn't align with your energy and your intentions the way you wanted it to. Where am I? Meditation. Okay. When you are learning to work with energy, I think meditation is one of the biggest things you can do as a beginner witch, because meditation helps you to quiet your mind. It teaches you to believe your intentions. So there is, I keep saying there's an app out there called Insight Timer, and I'm sure there's other apps. This is just the one that I use that I know works for me, that has a ton of guided meditations in there. It has 5-minute meditations, it has an hour meditations. So whatever it is, whatever kind of intention, you can look up, I want to love myself more, and punch that in there under subjects, and it will say, here's this many meditations, and one of them is 5 minutes, and one of them is 10 minutes, and one of them is 15 minutes, and one of them's a half an hour, and one of them's an hour. And you can quiet your mind and listen to this meditation and try to put yourself in that space that they're trying to help you create. And that will help you learn to direct energy. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, but it can be manipulated. It can be directed into a flow, a channel. There's energy channels all around you, and you just have to figure out how to infiltrate that channel that you want to put in some extra direction of that kind of energy. That's how spells work. So I hope that helps. I did want to, I know I mentioned this a couple times on my channel. There's a difference between magic, M-A-G-I-C, and magic with a K, okay? And when I talk about magic, I put the K in magic. And I have learned that from a long time ago. And I'm going to read you, Llewellyn has a great definition of it and why I do that. Okay. So magic versus magic is a way to discriminate between entertainment, you know, the black top hat and pulling a rabbit out of a hat, and techniques for harnessing internal and external energies that will help us change ourselves and our environment. That is why I put a K when I'm doing magical workings. That is why I put a K on my magic, because I want to differentiate what I'm talking about when I talk about magic to illusions and card tricks and pulling a rabbit out of a hat. That's not the magic I'm talking about. I'm talking about raising a vibrational energy source and directing it into a certain direction that I want it to go in. And that's magic with a K for me. So meditation, read, soak in as much as you can. Trial and error. You know, you have to try this stuff. You have to try this stuff. So the base of your pyramid is to know, to dare, to will, to be silent, and to go. To use that in your everyday practice. Every single day, everything that you do should be influenced by the base of your pyramid, by your workings. So find ways to put that into everyday life. Whether, like I said, that means I'm going to try out cinnamon this time, or I'm going to, whatever. Start that journal. That you should have some kind of magical correspondence journal that you're like, oh, sometimes it's by accident. Sometimes I'm like, wow, I sprayed this spray of patchouli at me, and I realized that I had more confidence that day, that I really felt like I knew what I was doing and where I was going. So perhaps for me, patchouli is a confidence builder. And when you're doing a spell, it is really about putting forth every bit of everything that you can towards that spell to make it work for you. And keep in mind that pyramid has 4 cornerstones, and one at the top can also correspond with your pentacle. So I hope you guys got some out of this. I plan on doing at least one more video today, but that was a biggie that I really wanted to get out of the way. Blessings.